Yeah, everything's changed. All sites are both encrypted and hackable. Television's melting down, and we are live here to chat about all of the TV that we've watched this past few weeks, actually. But there's quite a lot of it. A lot going on in the Netflix space and the reality space, kind of in all the spaces. I'm really excited. Perhaps most importantly, to talk about the season finale of Miss Eliza and Not the Duke. But also other things, Bridgerton, The Traitors, Agatha Christie's Seven Dials, just generally anything that your grandmother would have watched. I've probably watched in the last month, and I'm really excited to chat about it. And I'm very excited to be welcoming Kate and Carey here as well. How are you guys? And do you bring me any news?
Yay, yeah, I'm good. I bring a little news. So we did get a teaser trailer for the new Pride and Prejudice movie that's going to be on Netflix. Um, I don't know if there's any confirmation of a fuller trailer, and I think the tag right now is just that it's going to come out in the fall. But that it's exciting. I'm a little nervous. I'm a little nervous to get too excited. I Everybody was pretty harsh in the comments about who all the different actors look like and if they're
Mhm.
correctly cast. I can agree with some of it that it's a little strange to see a ginger Darcy. I will give people that, but to be honest, I have, you know, the ability to like, all right, it may be good. We'll have to wait and see. And I think it looks like it's going to be striking a familiar tone while also maybe having time to explore some parts that they never really get to. The other big part of news is going to be Legends of Vox Machina Season 4 comes out in June 3rd.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
I'm excited about both things, but particularly perhaps Pride and Prejudice. I will withhold the elder woman inside of me that wants to be like, but the best one was actually the, and I will be grateful that a new incarnation of this show is being made and that I am not the target audience. Younger folks are almost definitely the target audience, and I'm a secondary audience, and I will wear that throne with pride.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I am doing well enough. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, fresh off of the good sneaky nap. The only news that I do bring, and it was kind of strange because there had been no sort of news about the Lanterns television series from James Gunn for a very, very long time. And then they announced today that they were going to have a trailer tomorrow,
Ooh.
and then apparently, for whatever reason, they got said, "Hey, let's just go ahead and drop the trailer today." So the trailer for the new Lantern show came out today. Um, it looks really, really cool. It takes a lot of inspiration from, I think they said, True Detective, that kind of
Mhm.
show. It's pretty grounded. Um, from what I've seen, it's a superhero. It's in a lot of ways like Superman and Lois was a family show involving superheroes. This feels like a detective show that just happens to involve like Green Lanterns. It has that sort of feel to it.
Mhm.
It's pretty grounded, pretty gritty. Um, Watching the trailers kind of interesting after watching Superman on the big screen, hearing
Mhm.
them drop F bombs in the Lantern trailer. But it looks pretty cool. It looks pretty awesome. It's supposed to be coming out in August, and I am looking forward to watching it. Aaron Pierre, and I forget the name of the Hal Jordan Green Lantern character, but he's been on things I think like Friday Night Lights. I think he was the coach in that television show, and I'm drawing a blank on his name, but you can Google that if you want. Trailer's out today. Show's coming out in August. Can't wait to see it.
That is so exciting. I'm excited about that too. Um, I don't have a lot of news, but one piece of news that I have that I'm like over the moon excited about is the fact that a second season of Jury Duty is coming out. Remind me, did either of you watch Jury Duty season one? I was so late to the party. I literally just watched it this month. It's on Amazon Prime, and it's a show wherein it's filmed as if it's like a documentary following like the civil court process of like a jury, and they're doing like a trial of this one lady suing this one guy, but everybody in it is an actor except for one guy. One guy thinks that like he is a member of the jury, and then everybody else is like an extremely proficient comedy actor. Oh, it's so funny. It's so good. You guys will love it. Anyways, I was like, well, this is a fantastic show, but alas, there's simply no possible way to have a second season, because if you ever end up on a jury and you're surrounded by like the world's weirdest people and like the, funniest storylines, you will simply presume correctly that you're being pranked, right? Well, they're doing it differently. Instead, it's a company retreat. So season 2, they hire a guy on to do like temp work for a company, and to like they go on a company retreat, whatever. The trailer is out and the show itself will start airing later this month. I am over the moon. I'm so excited. I cannot recommend this show highly enough. You both would adore it. I literally mainlined it in a day. It was so good.
That sounds crazy. I have so many questions about the first season, but later.
Please,
maybe.
go ahead. Give me your top question.
No, I'm like, okay, so if you're doing a show about a jury and someone who doesn't realize that so did they shoot it at a courthouse? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, they shot it at a real courthouse in California. And the way they had it was like they had a call for like volunteer jurors, and like the way they set it up, like in this, they had a call for volunteer jurors. That's how they got our one guy who's like the real guy. So he was pulled from that call, but then he was told some people were summoned for jury duty. So some folks, California folks, were summoned for jury duty, whereas some could like opt in for this call. And they're told, like, because it's this particular judge's last case, like a documentary about the like jury process in California is being filmed, and it's made to be like, oh, it's just like really chill and informational. This is like for the education system or for the schools, or like they kind of sell it in that way. And he has no idea that like he is the only real person, and everything else that happens around him is just like actors. And it's a sequestered jury, so he has no way of like looking anything up. So he's sequestered for 17 days of like the most insane stuff. Oh, you'll love it. You'll love it.
Wow, crazy.
10 out of 10, highly recommend. Other last teensy piece of news that will be expired in a matter of hours is that the Unrivaled finale is tonight, otherwise known as a championship game to those without brain rot. Very excited about that. It's Phantom versus Mist, which, if I'm being honest, is not necessarily the most interesting face-off, but I love all these teams and all these women, so it's fine. Hakuna Matata, but very excited about that tonight. Well, it's time for us to get into the meat of the show, which is talking about the finale of Miss Eliza. Now, if you are following along, I'll have you know that we've been talking about this throughout the season amongst ourselves in a group chat, as one does. And so it's been an interesting ride of like, well, highs and lows as things progress throughout the season. And we kind of explored whether this was really panning out the way we wanted it to. And one theme that always stuck out to me in our chats, really our live stream before, but also our chats kind of behind the scenes, was this uncomfortable realism that bled into what we considered the romanticism of Miss Scarlet. So my question for you both is, with this season now closed, how does that discomfort sit with you now?
For me, I think the big discomfort came from episode 4. I think we all kind of had moments of we weren't even done with the episode and messaging in the group, I know where this is headed, I'm very nervous. And I think we even like saw little hints at it at episode 3. And I think there was an uncomfortableness about just what happened because we had seen seasons previous and knew where this could go. And how final or how drawn out or how devastating it could be. And while I don't love that they had it become a breakup at all, it was never, they didn't quite use that word, and of course it is like a modern terminology, it's a modern framework of like what that would be, but that is kind of the line I drew, that it was a space taking at the very least. And while I understood the in-story justifications, it was a little concerning just on the writing side of, are we doing this again? But what I do think they did really well is in tipping that scale, bringing back some of the realism of, they took some time, they took a beat, they both took a deep breath and recognized like why tempers were high and why emotions were high, and like that they were justified in feeling certain ways, that led them to forgiving each other and to settling the differences of, you know, he was scared for his daughter, and it is a realistic reason to be that upset. But he also kind of came to realize it wasn't quite as much a her thing as it was, or even really about his daughter as it was, he doesn't like the secrets, but he has to recognize that it's not like always as avoidable. And once it started to become something they were willing to work past, I think the great way that they handled it in season or episode 6, where they kind of even had to confront it and like rejoice in being able to work together for one last time, kind of mended what they did really well. And while I don't love the breakup, I understood it, and I think that they saved it fairly well.
Yeah, and I think it was easier for them to save that situation because even when they had the issue that they had, the conflict that they had, it was not a blow up, right? It was sort of a justifiable sort of understandable situation. And so it wasn't like, oh, I found you kissing somebody else or stepping out with someone else, and we've had these fireworks, and it was a blow up. It was a reasonable response, maybe a little bit more dramatized for television, but it was essentially a reasonable response. And I think we've talked about this before, how both of them have had the experience of being in relationships that worked, relationships that didn't work. So they are far enough down the line in terms of their emotional and relationship maturity where they could sort of take a step back and see how they could move beyond this as opposed to this being sort of an obstacle that was impossible to clear. So I appreciated that aspect of it. I mean, they're freaking grown-ups, so they handled it like grown-ups, and they treated the audience like grown-ups too, even though we might not have necessarily agreed with what sort of took them apart. I mean, we're talking about a dramatic series. There has to be something there's got to be some hurdle to clear. And this seemed like a fairly reasonable hurdle that they would have, considering the dynamics of their relationship and the dynamics of who they are in terms of him having a daughter, raising her by himself, and that sort of thing. And so it all felt reasonable, but in the moment, I think we sort of all like, there's that little bit of exasperation of where is this going to go. And I think the writers have, to the degree that they have demonstrated that they kind of sort of know what they're doing, but it's still, as an audience, you still got to take that beat. But I think they handled it as well as they could.
Yeah, it's like, this idea that there's no big blow up, there's no big dramatic screaming or throwing things, or I think the concern with the fights often with Miss Scarlet and the Duke was always that they would say things they didn't mean, right? They would go above and beyond and dramatize it and toxify it and say things you didn't mean. And so initially there's this, oh wait, this face off that she has with our new Calm 2.0 is only saying things you mean, and then that sits with you of, oh, he meant everything he said. Well, shit. You know what I mean? There's sort of that, well, because it's realistic, we can't just wipe it all away. Whereas if there was a big blow up, you could have this big coming back together and dramatized and, oh, I didn't mean any of it. And I was just so scared of you know, and kind of like dramatically get back together. But because there's this level-headedness and this lack of toxicity or romanticism, there's no way to just pretend that never happened or take it away. It was realistic, and everybody said exactly what they meant. And that was oh, go ahead.
I was thinking, because imagine if he had said, like, and you don't get this because you don't know what it means to be a parent. Saying something like that, trigger, problem, blow up. How do you get back from that? I think that might have been like something that, I don't want to say a lesser show, but I think that might have, obviously, if you wanted to ratchet up what this tension was going to be, that's sort of the route they could have taken. But fortunately, they didn't. And I think they've demonstrated even in the past that they need to be measured with themselves even when they're angry. And I think that's part of the sort of steps that they've taken in a relationship, which is pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I think you're right about how I think that is a mark of growth in the characters and the writing. I think in the past, it's not always been that every single confrontation that any character has ever had has been like over dramatized or overthink, but almost all of the interactions with Eliza and William were saying things they didn't mean, over the top, bordering to toxic, too toxic. And I think here you're right. It's that I I think we all kind of felt that gut punch, or like that, where's this going? That nervousness, because you're right. Like in the past, anytime that they had a fight, or with her and William, they had a fight, or they disagreed, or they called each other terrible things. It was so overblown that you couldn't take it seriously. They didn't take each other seriously ever. And there was a certain level of, oh, well, they'll just get over it. With this, you're right. It's very honest, it's very truthful, and they're not saying mean things. They're not calling each other names. They're not being disrespectful. It is a time where they kind of flagged something as, is this something we can be reconciled about? And they framed it as a breakup, but in actuality, it was more of, I just need some time to myself to figure out if I can handle this. And that's really what ended up happening, was this is a problem that I'll need to figure out, and then we can later discuss, but I'm not sure how to feel in this moment when it's so fresh.
There's a calmness that leaves you wanting to know where it's going, but not necessarily fearful that there'll be a blow up, more so fearful that it won't be, it won't be the same highs, but it won't be the same lows as well. And I think it's interesting to explore that, especially later into a show, when often shows will lean into, well, we got to be bigger than ever before. We got to be more dramatic than ever before. We've got to be more, now it's life and death, and now, that kind of thing. And they decided not to do that. And, as a viewer, I appreciate the kind of the approach from an intellectual perspective, but it is slightly less exciting, admittedly. However, they did find ways to make this season exciting. And one of the ways, that I always kind of hone on, and that I had a question about, is with these side characters, specifically some of the female side characters here, which are sort of spanning from morally righteous to gray to villainous and all of that. And they still kind of keep them humanized, but we see double agents, and we see stakes, and we see, kind of face-to-face, sometimes fights or philosophical talks that otherwise in previous seasons might have been like a physical fight. So my question is, what did you think of some of the side characters and the ways they attempted to create excitement and create drama outside of the romantic relationship?
I think I really liked I liked the new characters this season. I loved Detective Willows and I loved Miss Summers and I liked, yes, it was kind of a romantic storyline, but I really liked how it was. They used it often to parallel Blake and Eliza, but they also had their own independent storyline, and it was really interesting how they subverted expectations with what she was going to be and where that was going. And I did think that was really interesting, and I do think that it was a really well played and written character for both of them, and so that really was exciting. I think the Ivy Barnabas um, dynamic is always fun. I really love Ivy, and Barnabas can sometimes be a little bit much, but in an endearing way, kind of like a. I think we previously talked about them being Charlotte and Mr. Collins, where it's like
Mhm.
you wouldn't want to live with him, but you know he's a good guy. You know he it means well. You're just like you're a little much. You're really into this, and um, that it is an endearing characteristic for him to just be so passionate about everything. And it's kind of a, I do like that these shows, when they have characters that are meant to be kind of the comedy or they are the antagonist, that they are believable and endearing even when they are annoying or when they are wrong or evil or whatever. I think that is it's an interesting thing that they've been able to strike up in this show and in other shows on this theme or this masterpiece PBS stuff that we watch sometimes. It is a really interesting tone that they're able to strike up, and I do find it really enriching that it they're able to show like the gray of
Mhm.
characters even then when they're not in the spotlight. And I find that really fun.
It's I remember earlier in the season I was really sort of found myself invested in the scenes between Ivy and Barnabas,
Mhm.
and I quite frankly I don't know that I would have been able to say that in a season before, but I
Mhm.
like them sort of having to try to find themselves. And it's funny I say trying to find themselves because with Ivy, I've always felt like she absolutely positively knew who she was and what she was about. It just took circumstances to sort of be in a place where because I mean her being in charge of being the clerical manager should not shock surprise anyone who watches the show. I'm just glad that people outside of the viewers, people within universe get an opportunity to see what she's capable of. And I really sort of appreciated that. Um, and I would be remiss if I didn't say I absolutely love the partnership between Clarence and Moses. Those two out on the streets doing their thing. Um, and I probably had the biggest smile when Clarence finally did enough legwork and some detective work that Moses was actually impressed. I thought that was like the little cool moments from people who don't get an opportunity to be together. But this season afforded them the opportunity to do that. And just that little moment was really, really cool for a character like Clarence that um, sort of gets um, I don't want to say gets sort of seen as well, he's obviously a secondary character and that sort of thing, but he is capable of doing like much of the side characters are capable
Mhm.
of doing much more. And even in the allotted time that they have, they get these little moments, these little sparks um, to show and demonstrate that. So I absolutely love them. And I'm not saying that I need any sort of spin off of those two together, but obviously in the future if those two have opportunities to pair up, I will certainly be interested in what those two can get into.
Mhm.
It was nice to see Moses interacting with other characters beyond Eliza and to get a few references to his family and life outside of this while still maintaining like the secrecy of his character. I thought that was really nice and they seemed very intentional and thought through this season. And it was, it was nice to see Isabel, I believe was her name,
Mhm.
the double agent, the
Yeah.
clerical. Yeah, it was cool to see, that that morality explored, where we're seeing, initially she's just such a sweetheart, and we sat on here and we were like, oh, we know what she's for. It's to show that two people can work together and whatever. And then they turn it and she's obviously a double agent. And then there's still, at the end, you're left with a little bit of sympathy too. You have sympathy for the man she crossed, and you have sympathy for her for being forced in, her hand was sort of forced in that position as well. But it's not entirely forced. She's still, she is still culpable. She's still responsible for it. They maintain gray for a woman who is not how we typically see gray anti-hero, slightly villainy woman. Usually that is reserved for somebody who's a little more strong-willed or kind of has like a femme fatale look or whatever. So it was just a really nice exploration, and it didn't allow her to be pinned into any one box. And that, I think, scales up when we get to the end conflict and we see what's the name of the woman that Eliza was talking to right at the very, very end? Do you know who I'm talking?
Yeah, the agent.
governess.
I want to say like, what?
I think they refer to as the governess.
The governess.
Yeah.
Okay, so the scene, and it's in the finale where she's saying like, men are only going to go after their own interests. You can't trust them. Blah blah blah, etc. etc. And I'm already as a viewer, I'm like, oh, this, of course, this is going to be some like anti-modern feminist thing of like, Eliza succeeded because she trusted men and maintained romanticism and her hope and like that kind of stuff, right? Okay. So I'm like, okay, fine, whatever it takes to get her and Blake together. But like, this is the approach. All right. Noted. Okay. Right. Okay. So we continue. And she's like, okay, you can't trust my blah, blah, blah. And Miss Eliza's like, but yes, I can. I do trust Blake. I'm different and he's not like the other boys, blah, blah, blah. She's basically saying she's going to trust him anyways. And she's like, I don't share that mindset. And the governess is like, no, you don't. Mm-hmm. Like, I loved that. It was like Eliza, it was that perfect line where it's like, okay, Eliza's going to trust Blake. She's going to go with Blake for sure, right? We love that. XOXO. But the governess sees that there is that cynicism. There is that mistrust. And she's choosing not to act on that cynicism and mistrust, but she has not exercised that from herself. She is holding both things. And I think that's how you write an interesting, complex woman. You get to see her distrust men as a whole or systemically, distrust the way men are socialized, distrust, all of that, and still allow herself to be vulnerable, fall in love, and give it a shot, regardless of holding that view. It is very interesting. It's something I don't think you could write in a character that's not fully fleshed out, that is not of a certain age as well. And I thought that was fantastic. Like that back and forth that she had there where she gets to express like, here is what I'm acting on. And the governess gets to see, I see that you still have this in you. Like this is not coming from like blind belief. Fantastic.
I think it was sorry, go ahead, Carey, go for it.
Oh no, no, you go right ahead.
All right. I was just gonna say like it was an interesting way of playing it because I was nervous kind of on a different way of the governess introducing this concept and then using it. It was still like a little bit of skepticism that they were going to do okay. And I was worried that they were going to like fifth hour crash it out, like and make her just not trust him or like make their reconciliation fall apart. And so I was nervous about that. But what I think that they did really well is in that episode especially, but in other episodes in the season, she's surrounded by several men that she really trusts. And it's an interesting thing when there's this like very blanket statement posed to Eliza. And for a long time, if a blanket statement was posed to her, she fought back with blanket statements. And I do think it was a really great moment of her saying, no, I don't have that same viewpoint. And then the governess saying, yes, you do. But it kind of being her way of posing back, I don't trust all men, but I don't trust anybody really. And I choose to trust people that have proven trustworthy around me.
Mhm.
and have now actually learned how to be more trusting in general while not being walked all over and having the ability to see through people that are trying to use me. And while she doesn't see through Isabel, she doesn't really have an opportunity to. They don't interact all that much,
Right.
and nobody else does. I think it's a great time, a great kind of framing to show that she can trust a ton of other people, um, and it not make her weak. I think a lot of times in these kind of things, they frame like trust or teamwork as like a weakness, as a thing that needs to be avoided.
Mhm.
And I do like that they've opened her up to that, because I think even in the beginning she was really hesitant to like let, like, say, William help her even when
Mhm.
he wasn't going to stop her. And I think it's great, especially like leading into season 7, which will be the final season, and kind of also setting up her using this money to recruit new detectives that will be women. That she is finding a new way to hire new people, whereas the previous times that men have not been able to work for her, she knows how to be a lady detective. She knows how to use her innocuous appearance to her advantage. And I think
Mhm.
it's great that now she is using this developed trust, this
Mhm.
developed ability to work with other people, to help other women get into that field, and then also continue to work with the people who she's established. And
Mhm.
this will allow her to, Alexander had already kind of found a way to continue to work with her and also have a relationship with her. But I think this will set them up in the long run to have a life together and still be able to do the work that they always wanted to do
Mhm.
in a much more sustainable way.
Mhm. I
Yeah.
completely agree. Go ahead, Carrie.
No, I was just going to say I appreciate how they used the character of the governess, who played a pivotal role in an earlier season as well. Sort of serves as a way to sort of open up the realm of possibilities, what Eliza can be and what she can do. Um, sort of in a, I don't want to say in a similar character, but in a lot of ways she is. Um, I did think this, and because I'm sort of I didn't because I didn't remember how the um the Isabel situation sort of landed with me in terms of was she a willing participant in terms of that betrayal, or did she feel like she was under someone's thumb? And it was a little bit of both, and so which is the really sort of good way to play how that went down, as opposed to just being, oh, poor me, and whatever the case may be.
In that case, I liked that realism. I liked
Hmm.
that it wasn't black and white. That felt authentic to a human experience in that.
What of course, I know you didn't ask this, but what I would what would be really cool is, what we hope, at least what I hope, is that in season 7 that the governess has an opportunity. I know she was in sort of a terrible situation the last we saw her, but it would be awesome if she had some sort of ability to come back for a final season, in some form, in a way that sort of redeems, is not the word I'm looking for, but somehow turns a character, um, women in this time who found themselves in a situation like Isabel did, where it's like, well, she will be the person who finds like how we can use your skills and techniques and that sort of thing, in a better way, because the skills and things that she did, if you could imagine doing those things for good, would be awesome, right? Like a Black
Mhm.
Widow type of situation.
Mhm.
So it would be really cool if somehow those two characters get an opportunity to have some sort of appearance, or we get some sort of, I don't know, closure is not the right word, but I feel like I didn't want to just leave Isabel in a situation where it's like, oh no, this is a bad thing, it's a bad beat. What happened to her? Because I think to whatever degree, Detective Willows might need that closure, even because I know at the moment he was hurt and didn't want to deal with it. But I
Mhm.
think it would give him an opportunity for whatever sort of closure he would need. It would give her an opportunity to sort of, put a bow on her story, and it would give the governess another purpose, like she's had before, in terms of being able to take sort of situations and people and make them better in whatever way that she can. I think that would be pretty interesting.
I agree.
Yeah.
you actually kind of led in perfectly to my next question. So it is like I asked, we do have a next season, and while I would say this season ties up the kind of the things around Eliza's life, she's got the guy, she's got the job, she's got the family, she's got the friends, she's got the employees, she's got the funding, etc. We do have a lot of loose ends with some side characters, or at least I don't know if I'd call it loose ends, but more things to explore. So more generally, and you've already touched on this really well, what do you guys want to see in the 7th season?
You go for it, Carey.
Not everybody wants. I mean, obviously, I think obviously what we want to see is something that we don't too often get a chance to see, and that is sort of characters up to a point who on paper look like they have all the things that they would want, all the things that they would need, and then it's like, well, be careful what you ask for. So I think it will be. I'm interested in seeing sort of the things that they put the characters through now. But our two leads is who we're talking about.
Mhm.
To sort of see what they have in store for them, what they have to go up against, what they have to deal with when they're in positions where they feel like they have all the things that they want. It's not ideal at the moment, but it's as good as it could possibly be at this point in their relationship, at this point in their professions, and that sort of thing. Um, so my thought in terms of what I'm looking for is the last season. They know it's the last season. So all the things that you wanted to see happen to these characters as a writer is it's like there's no tomorrow. So give us what you want for them to be. And my gut tells me it should be a happy ending, but it wouldn't hurt my feelings if it's not, right? Because life
Mhm.
doesn't always give us happy endings. So a long-winded way, I don't know that I've answered your question, but here is what I do know. In a number of shows that we have all watched, we don't get the benefit of seeing a show go out exactly how it wants, when it wants, and that sort of thing. So
Mhm.
they have absolutely the opportunity to do it. So in terms of what expectations I have, um, I I don't know that I have any expectations of what I want to see. I just know that I want to see whatever it is that they're going to do because this is exactly what they want to do. It's the story they get to tell, and we don't get to do that all the time. So I'm happy
Mhm.
to see that.
Yeah, I calling it an epilogue may not be exactly what I'm reaching for, but there is a sense of like after the final episode, like I said, they've fully reconciled in their relationship. They are, telling people outwardly now, and they've got it set up so they can be public with their relationship. And then with their careers, they've both got it figured out. So I do think there is a certain level of if we come back for season 7, we either have time to really settle in and see what that looks like and kind of be able to dream and project what that would be for their next 30 years of future, or we can mess it up. And
Mhm.
so, at the very least, I hope we don't mess it up too much in
Mhm.
the way of like, I don't want them to crash and burn, and I don't want her career to crash and burn. However, I mean, of course, they need to have some amount of conflict and drama to overcome. But what I do think would be nice is to kind of, they were for so long afraid of the Moonlighting
Mhm.
Curse.
Yep.
And so I do kind of want in their final season to fully reject it and
Yeah.
fully lean into they are happy. They have had the happy ending and they get to stay in their happy ending all season long.
Mhm.
And instead, we get to see, I would love for Ivy to be there, but it does sound like Ivy may not actually be in the final season, which would be a
Mhm.
bummer.
Mhm.
But it would be nice to see the side characters that we do have and do love. I think Willow's has plenty more to explore. I think,
Mhm.
like you said, being able to kind of set up that there are other people out there with similar ambitions and similar desires to do this work, and set it up more as like a company, and like that there is going to be more out there, and you're just like getting to see this stuff. This is really not the end. This is the beginning. Type
Mhm.
ending would be nice, and have it kind of being set up as like this is the beginning of their little empire that they're going to be able to do while keeping it, positive, and like they sound like they'll be able to live happily ever after.
Mhm.
Um, would be really nice. I would love to be able to see something like that, and also still get to see some of the stumbling blocks of her restarting having employees other than
Clarence.
Yeah.
Clarence. Thank you. I think it'd be great to like see, kind of almost montagey level of her
Mhm.
training her new employees, and like sending out her little, like almost sending out her little birds to do her little like sleuthing for her, and then she pieces it all together and comes knocking down the door and be like, I figured it out. And by that I mean they did it, and now I say I did it, which is gonna be funny, and it would be very her to do. But I just want it to be, with not without any conflict, but I don't want them necessarily to nuke it just because they can.
Mhm. Yeah, I completely agree. I think that it's not interesting to just watch progress be lost. They can introduce new conflict, a new big bad, a new person at work who's causing problems between Inspector Blake or Captain Blake, whatever he is now. um, they can introduce the conflict of maybe Eliza feeling a little unmoored with Ivy and Barnabas off traveling the world or whatever they're doing, however they write them out. You can do some of that. You can write some conflict around Eliza, learning her new, role as a leader of a broader team, and being more of a mentor rather than boots on the ground, and learning what management looks like beyond like small scale management she did with Clarence, but I don't want to revisit the, oh, we're breaking up conflict, or, oh, somebody, I'm not sure if I want a relationship, or, whatever it is. Like, I don't want to revisit the exact same things as before. I also love weddings, and I do demand one in season 7. I won't take no for an answer. It will be illegal if they release season 7 without a wedding. So they should take that into consideration.
I
Yeah.
I did actually think of one thing I would really sort of be interesting to see in season 7. And I don't know if it's a situation where they want to pull a villain from, like, say, earlier in the season that's sort of seeking revenge, because I know one of the things, that, I mean, we're talking about a show about investigators and detectives and that sort of thing, but I don't know that we've ever sort of experienced um, a significant sort of, say, criminal mastermind, or that sort of thing. So it would be really sort of interesting if they decided in season 7 to sort of lean into the detective side of this show, and and I know we sort of got to see it a tad obviously in the last episode, but it would be really interesting if they were to introduce some sort of mystery or nefarious force that
Mhm.
required Eliza to start to count on all of these friends and family and that sort of thing that she's developed, and sort of
Mhm.
get a sense for why it, because it was sort of to be the payoff of why it was important to expand this network, this sort of resources, if there is some sort of significant big bad or nefarious situation that will require that sort of effort. So that it'd be interesting to see if they lean into that in the last season.
Yeah,
That
I
would be
think
interesting.
yeah. I think giving her like her officially giving her a full blown Moriarty would be really great. Like they've
Mhm.
done it a few times where it's like what a 2, maybe even 3 episode arc, but honestly, it'd be really great if they, because some shows do like the one off episodes where it's just one crime and that's it. And
Mhm.
I do think it would be really satisfying to see it build up a lot more as to one specific criminal or group or something like that within the season, kind of like you're saying, as it requires more than she herself alone is capable of, and relying on others. I did realize like the elephant in the room question, which is, do we want to see William come back at all as like a final goodbye
I don't think so.
pop-up?
I
I don't
don't think so.
I know
That's a
I know
good
there's plenty of people that
question.
would. I know there's plenty of people that would. I and like I won't be I say I won't be mad. I may be mad just how they do it. If it happens, but I'm with you. Like I don't need it.
Uh,
I don't think and I don't think that it would necessarily serve the story unless they wrote it really really well and they wrote in a really good reason to bring him back for an episode or something. Um, but maybe it's just like my CW senses were just pinged and I had to ask the question.
it's such a good question.
Only if they turn him into a Thanos level villain threat. Like he's just coming back to blow everything up. He got a wedding invitation. It's like, screw that, man. I'm going to ruin your life.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, either one of those things would
he
probably necessitate a riot, I suspect.
the
Um,
actor left to be in Marvel and now he's bringing Marvel back with him.
that would be crazy.
Yeah, I think when he originally left, my answer would have been like, yes, have her have like, some little romance, whatever, because she deserves romance and, whatever. But then like have him come back really brief. And we may have even like theorized about that at the
Mhm.
time. Like, oh, he'll come back briefly at the end, or he'll send even just like a letter at the end or something like that. That alludes to the fact that like off screen after the close of the show, they're going to reconnect now that they've had these like separate adventures. Now that I've seen her with Blake, and that's obviously a much better and healthier relationship, arguably hotter, blah, 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 Hakuna Matata. I feel like at this point you have to invoke like the don't text your ex happy birthday rules. Like it's just not gonna, he's got to
Yeah.
stay away. But that is such a good question. I'm sure somebody in like the directorial or production is asking that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, and especially, I mean, even from the beginning, as much as we've given them grief in like early seasons, how dramatic and toxic it has been, but especially in these later seasons, they don't try to do drama just for like shock factor's sake. It's not their shtick. But I think just the amount of CW we've seen as a collection, it is something that I'm worried about. I don't like the more I think about it, the more I don't want it, to be honest.
Yeah, same. Well, the invoking CW toxicity and, do we like it? Do we not like it? Is the perfect transition because I want to ask you all about your thoughts on the latest season of Bridgerton. Now, I'll acknowledge I have finished the latest season of Bridgerton, much to my dismay. You all are earlier in the season. I think you both watched like an episode and, likely seen bits and pieces and spoilers. So I won't take too terribly long, but just take a minute and tell me what you're thinking of this latest season of Bridgerton so far.
I season or episode 1 was fine. They always are kind of out with a bang, big party, whatever. I don't have any strong opinions yet based on episode 1, other than Colin's there a lot. Colin can leave, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You know how we've talked. There's been previous conversations about how like the other siblings just leave immediately, and that's really funny.
Yeah.
I would be okay. Like, Daphne can come back.
Sure.
Anthony can definitely come back. He has his own problems, but like Jonathan Bailey especially can come back. That's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
Simone Ashley, great. And I'm sure that actor is lovely. Can you go away?
Yeah. He's so boring. And it was interesting. His presence this season, I think, is supposed to be like he's the devoted husband. He's the one who doesn't have like a wandering eye, whatever, which typically I love that. And like how it's written, how like the words that come out of his mouth, totally fine. The character himself, so annoying. Yeah, it's really, I know they've got all these complications of who they can and cannot bring back because some people don't want to come back on the show and some people want to come back on the show. And that's like a whole World War III if you get into that. But
yeah.
And
I guess like Carey, close your ears if you don't want to hear any spoilers. But I do know that there is some amount of like that Penelope leaves the position of Whistledown,
Correct.
and then somebody else takes it on.
Uh-huh.
And I have initial impressions of that, and they are mixed. And I am really curious to see how I feel about it after I've actually seen it and what their justification in story is.
Mm-hmm.
Do
Yeah.
you have any feelings? I'm sure you do.
I do, and my feelings will largely depend on who picks it up and how they pick it up. Penelope actively wants to resign from Whistledown for the majority of this season, and they do go out of their way to show why. And she's not resigning from writing; she's still working on her writing, but she wants to write novels instead of gossip pages, and she kind of resents this being trapped in like the Daily Mail situation where folks are coming to her and trying to feed her this that they want in Whistledown. She basically is finding that now that she is publicly exposed as Whistledown, it's taken the magic out of it, and she's loving her writing. She has a great life. So I don't really mind her resigning. That's one of two resigning storylines that happen parallel within this, which I thought are both well done. The main resigning storyline that I think is incredibly well done is Agatha resigning from her position with the Queen. Those are just two just phenomenal actresses, and watching any scene they have together, any line they have together is just night and day above what anybody else is putting together. But the Penelope resigning storyline is fine. Having somebody pick it up is sort of a necessity, I feel, for this world. Whistledown is part and parcel to this world. Having Julie Andrews' voice is part, that's just part of it. Somebody has to do it. So now that once they had sold us on Penelope resigning, but not resigning her writing, having somebody else pick it up is like almost like a necessary evil. And how it happens at the end is such that you really don't hear much from the new Whistledown. So we don't have like an opinion formed on like, are they a good writer? Do we like the type of gossip they're communicating? How do they do at like puppeteering and orchestrating like social things that we don't know? I think with this season being an upstairs downstairs season where we get the family and we also get servants, and that's kind of critical for the Benedict and Sophie of it all. We get that, and then we get a lot of the younger children as well. I think that the new Lady Whistledown, who they've obviously not revealed, has to either be a servant or it has to be one of like the air quotes the children, one of the youth, to make Gregory and Hyacinth's season eventually make sense.
Yeah, that was so, because that was my first thought when I was thinking one of two things, quite honestly, because it's not a spoiler to me, because after seeing the first episode, you could sort of sense that like Penelope Stan as Lady Whistledown is just not going to work, because it's based on anonymity and all those things, and more than that, it's also based on sort of, I don't want to say a lack of empathy, but I mean you're exposing people's secrets, and that sort of that you sort of need to do that work in the shadows.
Mm-hmm.
So revealing her as Lady Whistledown had the jaw-dropping impact that I'm pretty sure they wanted it to have at the time, but then it's sort of like you've painted yourself into this frame, and so now what the hell are we going to do about it? And that's sort of what happened. So and so that's not a shock or a surprise. The real thing is that since you're telling me they haven't revealed who the new Lady Whistledown would be, because my first thought would be, well, she will just say that she's publicly resigning, but she's really not. She can go back to doing it in the shadows with no one knowing who it is. I don't know that they would go that route. It kind of feels like practically in real world that would be kind of fine, but like for a narrative story, you want to put someone else in that situation. So Hyacinth was like my first sort of thought in terms of who could sort of take up that mantle.
I thought it's Hyacinth or Alice Mondrich.
Because and then the other part was, and then the other part of me was like, well, if you really want to sort of do this without anyone, you've got to make it a man, right? Because no one would absolutely expect that. So one of those two things.
The male servants, maybe.
Alfie?
Like, is that the guy's name who like helps who is helping Benedict do all those things? Because if that's who I'm thinking, he had sort of a look in his eye like he was more than I'm just going to be background this season, right? So yeah, someone along those lines, I could certainly see it. Um, and so yeah, that's not a surprise. Um, Alice deciding to or wanting to leave. I mean, obviously she said that and she got really emotional. Well, here's the thing. I'm going to say that she was emotional. I was watching the first episode like at 1.5 speed, so it was like chipmunk speak. So I could make sure that I watched it. And so she could have had a dramatic pause. I wouldn't know because I was watching it so fast. But I could certainly tell that she was pretty emotional and adamant about wanting to leave and her reason for doing so. And then when the queen is like, nope, I was like, huh, that's yeah, they're absolutely going to come back to that. So, um,
Mhm.
and here's probably something that I've overlooked in all of these seasons is that the expectation is that always by the end of the season there's going to be a happily ever after, and I
Mhm.
don't want it wouldn't be a spoiler to me telling me that it is or it isn't. But my thought and watching the first episode is basically Alice in Wonderland, and it's like, well, of course we know how this thing ends, right? And I'm like thinking to myself, is there a potential for a curveball here? I
Mhm.
don't know that I want that spoiled, but that was like my first thought because I'm like, if they're giving us Alice in Wonderland, you could probably say the same thing about every season. We know how this thing ends, and the intrigue is always how do they get there?
Mhm.
And because you get the evil quote unquote stepmother and her two bratty kids and all
Mhm.
that good stuff. So I am intrigued. I am interested. Um, I just thought to myself, this far in the series, are they willing to throw a curveball in that way? Um, and I don't know. And I'm kind of sort of interested to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope you both enjoy the season. I think in the questions that we'll get to once you all have had a chance to watch, I allude to a lot of side storylines that are phenomenal this season. There is a lot of good this season. And I really didn't find myself repulsed or enraged by Benedict and Sophie. I just found myself bored by them. So don't take it as negativity. And what one person finds boring, another person might find charming. There's kind of different strokes for different folks. However, the positive I'll say is I just don't feel like they had that much screen time, Benedict and Sophie. And what they did give screen time to this season, I thought was fantastic. I really think season 4 was really one of the strongest seasons. It just wasn't the strongest romance. And that's okay in this instance. The deviating from the format by allowing so much side character focus actually makes me more excited for upcoming seasons, and also deviating from the format in that they're already kind of working through some of the other characters' storylines. Francesca is kind of a key one where we're kind of left wondering, is Francesca going to have a whole season, or are we going to see Francesca's storyline throughout other people's seasons? So it'll be interesting to see. I, however, have talked your ear off when it comes to both Eliza and Bridgerton. So we'll have to skip all of the other stuff we watched this week and go straight to Woman of the Week. Does that sound good? However, feel free to throw in all of the other things you've watched this week in lieu, by virtue of your Woman of the Week.
Mhm.
I'll give an example. One of the things, or two of the things that I've been watching are Olympics and Traitors. So my Woman of the Week is Tara Lipinski, notable gold medalist for the United States ladies figure skating, and also a cast member on the Traitors. Was she good at social deception? No. Deduction? No. Convincing people of anything? Also no. She was not good at the game at all, not even a little bit. Lasted probably because she was so terrible at it. However, I loved the character that she brought to the Traitors. She clearly wanted to bond with women. They betrayed her at every turn, but she clearly wanted to bond with women. She had a really sweet friendship with Johnny Weir that you see. I follow figure skating, so I've seen it for the past 20 years. But so you see, on screen on the Traitors, and it was fantastic. And the season of the Traitors was dramatic and over the top most recent Olympics was dramatic and over the top, especially for women's figure skating in a fabulous way. It was dramatic and over the top. We've had the first women's gold medal that we've had in 20 years, et cetera, et cetera. The curse is broken. And having Tara Lipinski as a announcer for that, fantastic. She's just been everywhere, everything everywhere all at once as the movie goes, and also managed to video call into the reunion. 10 out of 10. That's my woman of the week. Okay, your turn. We'll go with Kate next.
Okay. So I don't have one picked out. I kind of was actually leaving it as I know we'll get to other things, so let's see what I have time for. And now that we don't have time, I would love to have anybody to talk about from All Creatures Great and Small. That season was great. Loved it, loved it, loved it. But to be honest, my favorite character in the whole show is Helen. And she was sadly missing from a lot of the season because the actress was pregnant. So that does mean she'll be back a lot more in the next season. She is married to the main character. It's fine. But I don't have that much to talk about her. So instead, there is a book I'm currently reading, so it could change my mind after I'm done reading it, but I'm reading a book called The Everlasting. It's actually really popular. I went into it completely blind, and it's a really far more gritty and more of a literary fiction using the vessel of fantasy and time travel than I was expecting. But it actually, one of the main characters is a lady knight who in her youth kind of gains service to a queen, and through her early years has great devotion, and then starts to later grow disenchanted with her service and what she's doing. And I do think it's a really interesting character. It is a kind of flip on gender norms without it necessarily being shoehorned, which is good. I think sometimes that happens and it's not always as fulfilling. And I think this is a really well done one where she's a very unique and but very closed off character, and getting to see the different layers peeled back about her is really interesting, and getting to, because she's kind of a legendary figure. And there's legends and songs and myths about her, and then the unraveling, comparing how those myths came to be and what's real and what's not real, and her confronting her opinion on what battle and what war and honor mean, because she joined and started fighting for something that I don't think she doesn't necessarily believe in, and she definitely doesn't believe the consequences or the ends justify the means. And I think it's a really interesting character arc. I'm interested to see where it goes, but I do think that it's a really well done character so far.
So what you're saying is, you said so far, so it could be that we come back later and you like that woman of the week.
I'm
I
taking
take
it.
that.
Yeah, I
I take it
I could.
back.
I doubt it's going to happen. I'm 60, 75% of the way through the book, so I'm mostly done.
But you're
But I
taking a
mean,
step of faith, which is admirable.
taking a step of faith in saying that this is my favorite, or that I liked this, because I could be wrong. I have been wrong in the past where the last 10 pages ruin everything. So,
If we have a retracted woman of the week, that would be a first, I would suspect. um, wow, that's interesting. Um, I'll be my woman of the week. I'm going to talk about a niche sport that maybe me and two other people know about, but it's disc golf, more commonly referred to as frisbee golf. It's an incredibly niche sport, but there is a player, female player, obviously, who um, she doesn't throw as far as the other, because basically disc golf is like regular golf. You just use discs that are like frisbees, but they fly faster and farther than a frisbee does, right? Same principles as ball golf. But so anyway, she does not throw as far as some of the players that you would expect to see at the top of the sport. But what she makes up for in not being able to throw as far as she makes up it with it in guile, she makes up with it in guts, and just like an incredible spirit. And she's from Laos. Her name is On Scoggins. She is probably in her mid to late 40s. The players that she plays against primarily are in their say early 20s. She could quite frankly be some of their moms. Um, but all she does is play her heart out every week. Last year, she won like the disc golf's biggest event, Worlds, last year. Um, and the reason she's my woman of the week is because the disc golf season, the professional disc golf season, just started this past weekend. And in an event where, quite frankly, pundits said she had no chance because she doesn't throw as far, all those things, all she did was come back from chase card to win by like 3 or 4 strokes, teaching those young girls a lesson. And more importantly than anything else, when you see her, she just has this incredible spirit. If someone else wins, she's probably more happy that they won than the person who won did. And so when she has opportunities to win, if you find someone who does not like Owen Scoggins, who's not rooting for Owen Scoggins, get away from that person because that is a terrible, no good person, and you don't want anything to do with them. I think the best way that I can describe her is if you take Lady Bridgerton, what's her name, Virginia? Is that her name?
Violet.
So yeah, yeah. So if you take her and you said right now in the season that we're in, we're going to take your character and put you in the season to find a husband competing against all of these other young girls who've been doing this and looking forward to all this time. Um, she would find the diamond. She would be the diamond, and she'd find the male diamond every season, just knocking it out of the box. That's probably the best way I can describe to you in terms of who Owen Scoggins is. And that's why she is my woman of the week.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I love anytime we have women of the week that are from the sports world, just in general. That is, as you know, my new niche. That and PBS dramas. Relatedly, we had a question in the chat from, I believe, Lucia, asking where to find everything we were talking about. Miss Eliza is on PBS here in the States. Bridgerton is on Netflix. The shows Kate mentioned, or All Creatures, which Kate mentioned, is also on PBS. Traitors, which I mentioned, is on Peacock. Olympics were also on Peacock. And Carey, where could somebody watch disc golf? I'm actually asking for myself, not our chat friend. I'm just curious.
The easiest way to watch disc golf is there's a disc golf network. If you just Google disc golf network, it'll take you right to it. If you just go to YouTube and type in disc golf, you can watch a lot of what's called post broadcast coverage. It's sort of a really good way to get involved and see what the sport is all about. And as far as Lanterns is concerned, that's coming out in August, and that will be on HBO Max.
Hey, there's really no limit to what I will watch if it involves female athletes or competitors. For example, I've watched poker championships because I was rooting for a woman. I don't know how to play poker. So very happy for that new recommendation. Thank you all for letting me steal about 8 extra minutes of your time as well, and your tolerance with the new layout and new experience. We've got a random duck sitting above our heads over here. So all new things here in 2026. I'm excited for our next show where we will get to chat about, amongst other things, more about the latest season of Bridgerton once you all have completed it. So
Yeah.
with that, have a wonderful evening and go unrivaled.
Awesome.
Bye.